Okay, good Erev Shabbos to everyone. We're up to the Mishnah on Nun Vav Amid Beis. So we discussed the Trefis Bebehema, we discussed the Ksheris Bebehema, we discussed the Trefis Beofos, the Elu Ksheris Beofos, and this is what Kasha Beofos. Just keep in mind, we said yesterday that whatever's us in the animal is asa in the oaf as well, whatever is pertinent. Okay, and then we had an additional chedushim. Says the Gemara, "Ve'elu ksheres b'oif nikfa hagageres." Again, you might think we said yesterday that it should be a mashahu. Why? Because since the siman and shchita of a oif is one siman, so maybe a mashahu would make it a treifa, and you would not need roiv. Kemash malon the chiddush, right? That nikva hagageres is kshera. You need psuka hagageres. You would need roiv. Oishe nistika. Right? Or it's cracked. We saw yesterday, by behema, if it's cracked, meaning horizontally, so it gets pulled by both ends, so it's still the bird will live. It bites it on the head, but not necessarily near the brain. In other words, the concern was if it bites it on the head, it's going to go ahead and hit the krum around the mayach, around the brain, and will render it treifa. If it bites it in a place that's not keneged that, then it's kshera. Nikiv hazefek, if the zefek is taken away. Now the zefek, we have a nice picture over here of a zefek. Page Shin Pei Vav. Shin Pei Vav. Okay, on that thing on the bottom, the detached thing, okay? That detached thing on the bottom, that's the storage tank for the bird. If the bird overeats, but it doesn't need to digest, it stores what's called the zefek. In English, it's called the crop. C-R-O-P. C-R-O-P. Guys, we throw this out by the oilas oif and the chatas oif. We throw this out because since it's a ganif, it's going to steal. So we throw that out. So therefore, we're throwing out the zefek. Okay, that's the crop. So if there's a hole in there, it's kshera. Rabbi says a bigger chiddush. Afilu nito, even if there is none whatsoever, it is kshera. Even if you took out the zephyr completely, it's kshera. Yatsu b'nei me'ayin v'lei nikfu. If the b'nei me'ayin are taken out, and there's what, and did not made a hole in it, page Shin Peches. Yeah, Baruch. Shin Peches, you see the B'nai Me'ayin are taken out, and they're taken out, and there's no hole in it. That will be kshera as long as there's no hole. Okay? V'loi nikfu, as long as there's no hole. Nishtabru gapeha, if its wing is broken. Nishtabru ragleha, if its foot is broken. Nimritu kinafeha, it's missing its plumage. Rashi says plum, it's missing its big feathers. Rabbi Yudoimer in nitla hanutza, if the down feathers, then it's psula. The down feathers are the feathers that are they're right next to the skin. The down feathers are the that are right next to the skin. Okay, so here is the picture of it. It's on Shin Pei Zayin. Shin Pei Zayin. Baruch, you see it? Shin Pei Zayin. There's a picture over there that you have the big feathers, and the English etymology majors here. It says plume in Rashi, and the other one is down. That's on the skin. So these are kshera. So the Gemara is going to address Tan Rabbana. Maisa beRebbi Simoi beRebbi Tzadik shaholchu la'abishana belud. They're going to go ahead and calculate an ibishana in lud. Rabbi Avi, we just started the Gemara on Nun Vav on the base. And they said a very, very cryptic statement. The shiftoi ba'oinoi, and they stayed for Shabbos in the town of Oinoi. V'hoiru b'tarpachas kirebi bezefek. Now I could read this one of two ways. I could read v'hoiru b'tarpachas 1, kirebi bezefek 2, or I can read it as v'hoiru b'tarpachas kirebi bezefek as one statement. My nafkamina. If you read it as two separate statements, then the tarpachas, guys, the tarpachas is the aim, is the womb of the animal. If you read it that way, if it's missing the womb, it's psula, Kerebi bezefek, if it's missing the crop, it's kosher. If you read it as one statement, it's the tapachas is like Rebbe by what? By zefek, and therefore it will be ksheira if it's missing its womb. Those are the two ways to do it. Says the Gemara, Iboilu, Hayr b'tarpachas by the womb li surah kerebi bezefek leteira, two separate statements. Dilma, no. Hayru b'tarpachas lehetera kerebi bezefek, it's one statement. Ava kerebi bezefek leistir lahu. But in other words, he's just making a comparison, like Rebbe holds by the zefek, it's muta. Who adin the terpachas, the womb, if it's missing, it's muta. But in Achinami, he disagrees by Rebbe by zefek. Again, the Tanakama said if there's a hole in the zefek, it's kshera. Rebbe said the bigger chiddush, if it's even missing it. So it could be that the statement is again Keneged Rebbe, and he holds you need only nikveh kshera, but nitla is what is psula, is it treifa? And the Gemara answers teku on the statement of what? Of the Meister of Reb Simoi and Rabbi Tzadok. Amar Rabba, Vitem Reb Yeshua ben Levi, Gagoy Shel Zefek. Okay, guys, page 414. Page 414, Shin Pei Zayin. Not for, picture 414. Shin Pei Zayin. The Gag of the Zefek is where it meets the Veshet, fellas. The Gag of the Zefek is where it meets the. So here's the question, fellas. If it's like the Veshet, then it's going to be a treifa b'mashahu. If it's like the Zefek, it's going to be kshera. So, in other words, do you remember, fellas, we spoke about the brain, at which point in time the brain becomes the spinal column, right? At which point, in Afkamina, the brain is a whole, mashahu, and the spinal column is broiv. So this is like discussing that. So, Gaga shel Zefik nidoin kiveshet, and therefore it's going to pasel b'mashahu. Heicha, where exactly is it? Rabbi barabaya kolshen nismayach imoy. As we saw, you stretched it out, guys. You stretched it out. That area where you go ahead and stretch it, there it is, Baruch. That area where you're stretching it at the top, that is going to be like a veshet. So if you have a hole in it, it's going to be a treifa. So nafkamina exactly where the veshet ends and where the zefek begins. Okay, very good. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak, Yatsa b'nei me'eha. We said if the kishkes come out, then therefore it's as long as there's no hole in the kishkes, it's going to be kshera. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak lo shanu ela shlei hepech behen. That's provided you didn't turn it over. Avol hepech behen shreifa. Once it's turned over, that's it. Dichsiv hu oisecha, he made you by chonenecha and established. Malamed shebora kadosh baruch hu koinaniyos ba'adam. He established bases like lashon of kan, bases in Adam. Shem nepach achas mehen. If one is turned over, any yachal chayos, not able to go ahead wide and live. Hashem made it a certain way, right? This is the way. I once heard like there's like 20 something odd feet of kishkes inside of us. Like if it comes out, to put it back is not easy, as we're going to see in a second, by a very interesting medical maneuver, as we're going to see in a second. So it seems if you turn it over, it's supposed to be based this way. If you turn it over, then it's what? It's going to be a treifa. Tanya. Now just a little agadata. He made you and established you. Kirach, like a city, that everything's in it. Mimenu kahana, we have a kahanim. Mimenu neviah, we have a neviim. Mimenu sarav, we have our leaders. Mimenu malacha, we have our kings. Shnemar mimenu pina, mimenu pana, mimenu yaseid. Ahu arma, there was Armenian. The chaziel hu gavra, he saw an individual. The nafal me'igro, he fell off this roof. La'ara, to the ground. And paka krase, his stomach split open. V'nafik me'eneha, and his kishkas came out. He was still alive. Asil lebrei, he brought the man's son in front of him. V'shachte kamei be'achuzas einayim. And he made it as if he shechted his son in front of him. Achuzas einayim means he really didn't do it, but it was an optical illusion that he did. And ingid, he groaned visnayach, and oil mayone, so his kishkas went back in. V'chaytir lekrase, and he stitched him up. In other words, very interesting. It came out. In other words, to put it back in, the guy, I guess, was concerned he'd be mapechit, and this fear that the emotional trauma of seeing his son geschachten caused him to and that it rebounded back inside. Fascinating. Okay, don't try that at home, I guess, right? But an interesting medical procedure. Tell you, but every once in a while you get these Gemaras that are that's like. Do you remember the Gemara in Ksubis fellas brain salad surgery? Remember they had the organism that was on the brain and they softened the skull and they were able to put it on a leaf so it didn't pull the brain out. It was just amazing what they were capable of doing. Nishtabru raglecha. We said if its feet is broken, it's kshera. Hahu sina de inkure. There was a baskets of inkure, a type of birds. The asila kamei de Rava that was born in front of Rava. Says Rashi, the inkure oifesh nishtabru raglehem be'arkuva lemata oy lemaila, above or below. The ena etzim yoytz lechutz. Okay, so he has uh, broken bones. It has below the akuva or above the akuva, the thigh. And so it's akuva is the knee. So you have it below the knee or above the knee. Okay, so he had a whole basket of these things. Our Mishnah seems to say that it's kshera to make a distinction where it was broken. It just said a broken leg is not a problem. So who Sina dan Kuri the Asila Kame de Rava. Batke Rava Bitsumas Hagidin. Rava went ahead and he checked out Bitsumas Hagidin. Picture 416. Baruch. So you see it? So there's broken above and below, and he's by the Tsumas Hagidin, we're over here. Here's the Tsumas Hagidin, right over here. So he's checking over here. So now, Ba'achshere, and Rava was machsherit. Amrav Yehuda Amarav Shamuta Yad Bebehema Kshera. If the yad, we had earlier fellas, if the back part is missing, there's an opinion. If the nivim or the ligaments are nisachel, if the ligaments are putrefied, then it's a treifa. That's the back foot. This is the yad. This is the front foot. Shmutas yad bebehema. Okay, that's here it is, right here. Picture. You good? That's shmutas yad bebehema, at the picture 417, page Shin Sadik. So shmutas yad bebehema is kshera. Shmuta yorech ba'oif is a treifa. However, if in the bird, if the page Shin Sadik base, picture 419. Okay, so if that would be a treifa. Now we're gonna discuss this at length, fellas. So the calf is the the leg of the chicken, of the bird, and it's shmuta, it's dislocated, and it's a treifa. Why? Chashin and shema nikva hareya. You worry that perhaps it got dislodged and it pricked the reya and made a hole in the lung. Ushmul Amar Tibadek. You go ahead and check it. Check the lung. We have ways to check the lung, blow it up, put water in. V'cheinam Rabbi Yochanan Tibadek, check it out. Chizkiya Amar, a very cryptic statement. Ein reya la'oif. There's no lung to a knife. Now, if taken literally, right, that doesn't make too much sense. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Yeshlai, there is a lung to the oif. V'yeshlai ka'ola shel vered bein agapayim. And it even has between its wings, it even has that rose surface. It has that rose thing that we said that if there's a hole in it, it's a treifa. Ma'yin re'el oif. So what Rechizki means is in re'el oif. Elaim with the less like klal. If you can tell me it doesn't have it all, well, in this way, you open up a bird, you'll see it. Can't be that it doesn't have. It has to have. Elad mitrif beit. In other words, there's no din of trephus in the bird. There's no din of there's no din of tarif in the bird in the lungs. So Vatani Levi trephus shemanol chachamim bebehema kinegdam ba'oif. So we know the hole by the behema in the lung is a treifa. Memela, the whole parallel in the oif has to be a treifa, right? You just told me the same thing. So how can you say not? Yes or aleim oif nishbar etzem afa bishlei nikiv krum shel moich. If the bone is broken, even if the cranium is not burnt. We said yesterday this is speaking about a bird of the water birds. Ella ein lo, ella what does it mean? Ella ein loi. It doesn't have the halacha loy li napel v'loy li chamer. We saw yesterday there's a halacha of if the bird falls, it's smashed, it's fall, you have to check to see if it has a din of juices. You have to wait. You have to wait 24 hours. In addition, you have to do bedika because maybe it got smashed. V'loy lechamer, we saw a din that if the red part, the kurkivin, the lave, the kaved turn green, it's a treifa. If the green part, the dakim, the intestines turn red, it's a treifa. So that doesn't exist by the lungs. My time, why don't you have to worry about the lungs? Since the majority of the ribs, they'll protect it. You have the ribs going around the lungs, and as a result, they're going to go ahead and they're going to protect the lungs. So you won't have a problem of nipol and nechamer. Fred the Gemara, the Amr Rabbi Yochanan Yeshloi Yeshna Ka'ala Shel Vered Ben Kapayim Mechal the Chizkiya Saba the Lesley. When he said, in other words, if you see what Rabbi Yochanan is saying, we can ascertain what Reb Chizkiya must have meant. So Rabbi Yochanan said Yeshloi they do have, and it has what? It has this particular part of the anatomy. It must be that Chizkiya was saying it doesn't have that part of the anatomy. Ella Amr Marav Mishmeid Rabbi Yosef Reb Chanina Midvar Shel Bribi Nika, from the words of Reb Chizkiya, the Gadol Adar, it's recognizable. Sheina Baki B'Tana Goyim. He's not an expert in chickens. Meaning he wasn't used to eating chicken, so he didn't know the anatomy so well. I think it was said facetiously. Amrav Huna Amarav Shamuta Yerach Ba'oif Ksheira. Okay, we saw above Shamuta Yerach is a treifa. Here we say Shamuta Yerach is Ksheira, where the thigh comes out, disattaches Ksheira. Amle Rabba Barav Huna LeRav Huna for Rabbanan the Asimi Pumpadisa Amru Rabbi Yehuda Mishmei the Rav Amru Shmuta Yerach Ba'oif Treifa. So Amalei, so Rav Huna said, Bri, my son, Nahara Naharu Upashte, river Upashte, a river, and it goes. Rashi guys. Naharu Naharu Upashte, Ein Pashte Anor Daima Zeh, Ein Daimin. The flow of the river is not similar. Zeh Charif, one is very strong, very and one is very docile, it stays still. So too the minig regarding the shamuta of the yerech, whether it's a treifa or a ksheira, is a subject to the minig of the place. Rav ksheira svirale, Rav held it was ksheira. For b'nei pumpadisa shenog by issa, he saw b'nei pumpadisa they were noig issa. V'lo yitiru b'fneihem, and he didn't matter in front of them. For Rav Yehuda mi Pumpadisa have, and Rav Yehuda was from Pumpadisa where they were noig yisur. But Sava the Rav treifa svirle, and he thought Rav held a treifa. In fact, Rav held ksheira. So that's that. So he mistakenly thought that Rav said it's a treifa. In fact, it wasn't a treifa. He was noig his minig of his place, so he thought it was a treifa. Let's see it one more time. Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav Shemuta Yerach Boiv Ksheira. That's what Rav held. It's kasha. Amar Rabba Rav Huna LeRav Huna for Rabbanan Diasmi Pumpadisa Amru Rav Yehuda Mishmei the Rav Amar Shemuta Yerach Boiv Treifa. So Rav Yehuda is reporting in Rav it's a treifa. So what's the correct pshat? Is it like Rav Huna or like Rav Yehuda? Two Talmidim Mufakim of Rav. What's the answer? The answer is Rav held ksheira. But since Rav Yehuda was from Padisa, where the noig iser, he thought mistakenly that Rav held that it's a treifa. Amalei Bri, so Rav Huna said to it, right, my son, Nahar Naharu Pashte. Also, Rabbi Abba Ashke, Rabbi Yirmiyah Bar Abba, the Kabodik B'Tsumas Agidin. He found that he was checking out the Tsumas Agidin, that area where we saw the sinews. Garashi brings there were 16 sinews that go over that area. Amulei, Lamalei, Lamar, Kulahai, why do you have to check that? Rav Huna Amarav, Shemuta Yerach B'Ev Ksheira. If it's missing the leg, it's kasha. So what do you keep about the Tsumas Agidin? Guys, you're taking off the leg, right? You're taking off the leg and it's kasha. So you're worrying about a part of the leg. Says the Gemara, Amalei, Anamasisi Yadana, I know a Mishnah. Behema Shenechtaku Ragleha, a behema that its foot broke, Minakuvu Lamata from the knee and below Kshera, Minakuvu Lamayla Psula. Makes no sense. Guys, L'chaira, the it should be kosher there as well. The chain shenitel tzumas agidin. So too, if it takes the tzumas agidin, it's going to be a treifa. So that's all I know, right? That's all I know. Rav Allah the chain ba'oif. Not only is that by an animal, hu adim ba'oif, that if the tzumas agidin are missing, it's going to be a treifa. Ihachi kosher the Rav ad Rav. So now you got a big problem, Dalit. Rav Paskin on one hand that the shmuta where the leg is disconnected, right? But it's shamut, it's kshera. And now he's saying that tzumas agidin on the leg is psula. So you have a stira, Rav mineu bei. Remember, Rav was the one who matted a shamuta when it was disconnected. And now you're telling me that what? The part that's disconnected, if it's cut, the gidim are cut, it's going to be a treifa. So Ishtik, he remains silent. Amalei, Dilma Shoni La being Shmuta Lechattucha. Maybe Rav makes a distinction between something that's disconnected and something that's cut. Makes a distinction, but something that's disconnected and something that's cut. Okay, so Amalei. So I'm just lost who's speaking to who over here. We have a conversation going between Rav Yirmiyah, Rav Abba, and Rav Yirmiyah. So Amalei Parashta Shmaisa the Rav. You're saying in your own words that this Rav makes the distinction between Chatucha and Shamuta. Beferish Amarav Shamuta Kasha Chatucha Psul. He says, in other words, that's a distinction. Rav holds that if it's cut the gidim, it's a treifa. He holds if the yerech is shamut, it's not, because there's a distinction between shamuta when something is disattached and something what is cut. So Rashi tells us, Amalei Baruch Hashem. You always feel good when you don't understand what's going on, and Rashi feels he has to tell you, because it means that what? It's understandable why you don't understand. You have to so many Amalei. So Rashi just tells you, guys, all of a sudden Rashi says, pops up, Rav Yirmiyah Rav Abba. Who is talking? Rav Yirmiyah said to Rav Abba. You should know who's talking. Very gishmak. So you Rav Abba you are trying to give this teretz in your own as your own. Guess what? Rav himself gave this teretz, the distinction between chatucha being a treifa of the sumas agid and shamuta of the yerech being kshera, because the difference between chatucha and shamua. Very good. V'al and don't be astounded by this. You cut it over here, it lives. You cut it over there, it dies. So again, treifus is very, very difficult. There's certain things you don't understand. Kisolik Rav Abba. Now we have the same Gemara, right? But different Amoraim. Same Gemara, different Amoraim. Kisolik Rav Abba, when he went up to Eretz Yisrael, Ashkel Reb Zera. Reb Zera, remember, we had gone up to Eretz Yisrael earlier, so Rav Abba, found Reb Zera. The Yosef Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav. He was Shmutas Yerech Ba'oif Treifa. If it's missing, it's a treifa. If it's disattached, it's a treifa. Okay. Now we had Rav saying it's kshera, guys. Remember, this is the same as Rav Yehuda from Pumpadisa. He made that mistake. We had Rav saying what? It's kshera. And over here, he's saying that Rav Huna said it's a treifa. We have above him saying it's kshera. Amalei Kai Demar, the life of Reb Zera, Miyumid the Solik Mar Lahacha, that you went up to Eretz Yisrael, Havile Pischan Peh Kamed Rav Huna. We had an opportunity to go ahead and speak to Rav Huna, V'shalinu v'amalon Shemutas Yerech Boif Kshera. Not treifa like, but kshera. V'ashtchei nami l'Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, the Yosef v'kabodik b'tzumas agidin, again the same shak v'tarya. V'akshilei le'sobel amar hodam Rav Huna amarav shamutis yerech boif kshera. You don't hold that? No, why are you checking tzumas agidin? If the whole leg off is kasha, then tzumas agidin should be a problem. That's the kasha. Amalei anamastisa yadana behema shenechtku ragloham in arkuva lamata, from the knee and above kshera, and arkuva lamaylis psula. Right, mata means below. Akuva means above. Even the tzumas agidin, it's a treifa. So therefore, you have to check. Rav Allah v'chein ba'oif v'imri lo ihachi kasha the Rav ad Rav shmuta, ksheira, chatucha, right? We said, if the whole leg off is okay, then how can the sumas legin be not okay? Says Ishtik, he was quiet. V'akshile, v'dom mashani le'rav ben shmuta le'chatucha, v'yamali, v'yat mafrashta, shmaitza derab, right? You're explaining right away. B'ferish amarav, shmuta ksheira, chatucha b'sula, v'yat mabiyotcha. What, bottom line, what do you hold? Guys, we had a whole minute and a half of what's the halacha by a shmuta. Rav says, initially says ksheira, then we have the opinion treifa. What exactly? So let's get to the bottom line. Hachi Amarav Chia Barashi Amarav Shamutas Yerech Ba'oif Treifa. The Chain Amarav Yaakov Bar Idi Amarav Yochanan Shamutas Yerech Ba'oif is a Treifa. The Amar Rav Yaakov Bar Idi Ilmoli Havi Rav Yochanan Ba'asra the Oira Ba Chavrasra Lahaitera Pirkas. He wouldn't jump if there was a place that was Chaverim said it's Mutta. The Amar Chanina Amarav Shamutas Yerech. The Amar Rebbe Shamutas Yerech Ba'oif Ksheira. But Tanagolas Hoysel Reb Chanina, Reb Chanina had a chicken, Shenishbla Yerach Shalah, Ve'evil Ifnei Rebbe, Ve'tiruloi, and Rebbe permitted it. Umolcha Reb Chanina, and Chanina preserved it in salt. V'havi Moiri Ba'halach L'Tamidim Zeheta LaRebbe, Zeheta LaRebbe. Again, you see this big question mark about the Shmuta of the Yerech, the Shaila. So Reb Chanina had a heta from Reb Yehuda Nasi. He went ahead and he preserved it by salting it. Usually, I said salting it, he would eat it. No, he preserved it with salt, and he paskin that it's kosher. But less hilchasakachol and shmaitza. The whole it's not like that. El kihod shoyel Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Noroi as Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Right. Just 1 second. Okay, so the halacha, we're trying to get to the halacha. What's the bottom line over here? For less hilchsak chol hanishmaitze el kihod shoyel Rabbi Yossi ben Noroi as Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi kideris kana bekama. What's the shear of a hole in the kana? Amaloi Mishnah Shlema Shaninu Ad Ki Iser Italki. Until what we saw the Italian Iser, we saw that the dinner cardinoi. Amaloi Valoi Rachel Achas Hoysa B'Shkunasai. There was this sheep in our neighborhood. Shenektar Kana Shalah. It got a hole in its windpipe. V'asulei Krumim Shalkana. We made a tube. V'Choysa. In other words, I guess they made a tube to cover it and it lived. So you see, it's not a treifa if it lived. Amaloi v'alda at samich. You're being samich on this intervention. Halacha Rafcha b'Yisrael shemuta yerech ba'oif treifa. Okay, that's what we got to know, guys. That's the line. That's what we have to know. That shemuta of an oif yerech is treifa. The Tanagolis is Hoysel Rav Shimon ben Chalafta. Rav Shimon ben Chalafta had a Tanagolis. Shenishmuta yerech shalah. It dislocated its back foot. The Asalei shoferish shalkana, and he made for it some type of splint. B'chayis, and it lived. And we know it's a treifa. It lived for 12 months. Hachanami, by the seal that they made for the gageres, it was made to mishchodesh. So in other words, it's a treifa. So the bottom line from here, it's a treifa. I went through the halacha. Okay, this is in Hilchos Treifas. It's Simin Nun Hey and Sif Beis. Etzem HaKulyas, the bone of the kulyas, that's the yerech. Shenitak mimkomo, that got disattached from its place. The makom chiburoi beguf, where it's attached to the body. V'hainu buko de itma, that's what the shaf miduchta. That was one of the zayin of the Shef Shmaitza. Buko de itma, the shaf miduchta. Treifa, bein bebehema bein ba'oif. So Shulchan Aruch paskins, that guy's what? That it is a treifa. However, there's an addendum. For who the achol? It has to be, remember that the ligaments were disattached, the nevim were disattached, and they were rotted. Who the achol niveha? Vehema yisera shebe'etzim hakaf sheyotzes ala etzem. I guess those are the strings. Aval nifsach shaloi machmas ikol kshera. But if they didn't disattach because of ikol, it's kshera. It says there, Mavachein im loinis aklu rad me'ut otim. If only a little bit was disintegrated, and most of the niveha that attaches it are intact. Kosha midina, it's kosha. We're not such experts in this, so it's the Rama. Okay. Baita. So we just Rav Shimon Chalafta, he was the one who made the splint for his bird that had that lost that the yerech was nishmat, the bone was nishmat from the yerech. He made a splint, but it's only going to last X amount of time. Okay, now Amru Olav of Shimon ben Chalafta she'asik b'dvarim hayo. He was asking b'dvarim, guys. He was isik in things. He liked to experiment. Asking b'dvarim. Rashi said he'd like to experiment things. So that would make a lot of sense if he would make the splint for a chicken. Rabbi Yehuda said if the down feathers are missing, it's puzzle. But Tanagalas Reb Shimon ben Chalafta, he had a chicken. Shenitla noitza shalah was missing its down feathers. Ve'nicha b'tanor, he put it in an oven. V'tola aleha b'matla shel tersayim. He, in order that it shouldn't get burnt, he covered the smith had some type of sleeve that he put it in, and it would protect him from the heat. The godla kenafayim achroinim yosim and rishayim, and it grew down feathers more than the originally had. So he's showing that it's not a treifa. So this is an example of his experimentation, right? This is an example of his experimentation. Maybe Yehuda says a treifa could get better, and therefore over here also there's no raya that it's not a treifa. Maybe it is a treifa, but treifas can improve. It says Gemara in Cain, if it's speaking that he holds that way, b'midi the mitarfa ba, right? Higdila kanafayim achronim yosim rishayim. In other words, if it gets better, it's going to be another part of the anatomy. It's not going to get better in the thing that Gufa made it a treifa. Over here, Rabbi Yehuda Taina, it was a treifa because it lost its down feathers. Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta's experiment showed that it didn't gain back its down feathers. I'll say it's treifas mishabachas. That's if, let's say it had a broken sumas agidin we're missing, right? And it's a treifa as a result. And all of a sudden it gets fatter and heavy, that's a case of treifa mishabachas. But the treifa in its that caused it to be a treifa, the down feathers, that they should get better, we don't say. So in other words, it was a very successful experiment to disprove Rabbi Yehuda's opinion of down feathers being a treifa. Mayaskim b'dvarim. What's an example? What do you mean? He got a title of being oisik b'dvarim. What did he do? Samar Ramashashir dechsiv leich el namala atzel re'ei darchaha v'chakam asher ein loy kotzin shoytu u'mayshel tovim b'kayitz lachma. So it says about the namala. The namala is never lazy. It has no leader, and tachin b'kayitz lachma. It prepares for the summer. It's lechem. Now it seems that they don't like the sun. It seems that ants don't like the sun. This is a pasuk in Mishlei. It seems like ants don't like the sun. Amar Ezel, I will go. Ichse and see. Ivadehu the leslu malka. It said it doesn't have a kotzin, right? I'll go ahead and do an experiment to see if it has a melachanat. So what was this experiment? Azul but Kufis Tammuz. He went to the Kufis Tammuz, June 21st, the hottest time of the year. Parse leglime akina de shimshani. He spread a cloak, akina, on the nest, the shimshani of ants. Now the ants, Nafik Asa, one of them came out, Chad Minayu. The scout came out, and Asnayach be Simona. And he put a simon on this ant that he knows which, how can you tell the difference in an ant? So this ant came out, and he put some type of simon, painted it white. I don't know, he put some simon that he'd be able to tell this ant. Oil, the ant went back into the nest, and Amalahu, Nafal Tula, and he informed that it's shady, it's not hot. Nafik Viasa, so they all came out. Dalia Leglime, he removed the cloak. Nafal Shimsha, right? Now the sun was there burning on these ants. So Nafal Alel Bekatle, they jumped on the ant that he had made a simon on and they killed it. So so he wants a proof from this experiment that there's no leader. Omar Shmamina Leslo Malka. Why? The Islay, if there's Islahu, if there's a Malka, Harmona de Malka Loili Boy, wouldn't they have to ask permission to kill this guy? Amalei Avacha Brei the Rava Ravashi, Vidilma Malka Havi Badayu. What's your raya? Maybe the Melech was there and he gave him permission, and in fact he killed him. Inami, Haman de Malka having the kiti. Maybe that was a statement. You don't have to ask permission. It was understood that if you're going to go ahead and subject the tribe to the son, you're going to get killed. Inami bein Malka Malchabe. It was the in between periods that there was no king. There was no king. If I recall correctly,
Why would he
so
be allowed to do this? L'Shem Bar Chalafta? Isn't it
excuse me.
Rabbi Chaim?
Tsar Bali Chaim is only if there's no purpose behind it. Again, it's a big. If people don't make if you have any purpose whatsoever, it's not Tsar Bali Chaim. He wants to know. There's a pasuk. There's a pasuk that says they don't have a leader. He wanted to limp the pasuk. So where's the Tsar Bali Chaim? Besides, he didn't kill this ant. The other ants killed the ant. Where's the Tsar? Says the Gemara. Amar Avuna, similar treifa. The similar treifa is Yud Beis Chaydesh. In other words, it's not going to last more than 12 months. Mesivei, similar treifa, kol she'ena yoledes, it won't be able to give birth, won't be able to father or give birth. If it gets better, be do a shikshera. If it gets better, then you know it's kshera. Misnavna v'heleches, if it gets weaker, be do a shitreifa. Rabbi Yoim is similar treifa, shleishim yoim, 30 days. 2 or 3 years, right? You see, right? Because it's question of Huna, right? You see that it can't live. Rav Huna said, guys, here's the question of Rav Huna. You, Rav Huna, said 12 months. We see over here it can live 2 or 3 years. It says, it's machlekes tanoim whether it could live beyond 12 months. The Tanya. Now, this is our famous Mishnah, fellas, regarding the skull. At which point in time does the skull lose its shame skull that it's not metama puma? Tumas oil. Famous picture. Hay. Or you can just look at that. Right? At which point in time, that's the jack-o'-lantern, right? At which point in time does it lose its does it so we said that mulligan, like the combined to the of a drill of a surgeon. So now, ubagagolis sheyesh benekev echad orach afilu nekovim harbe mitzarfim lemolik mikadeach. We said a bunch of the little ones. We're going to put them together to be what the size of the drill bit of a. Rabbi Yosi ben Amashul Maisa be'inbol. That's the name of a place. Ve'echad sheniftchu gilgoltoi ve'oslei chiduk shel kruyu. They made some type of seal. V'choye it lived. Amar Shimon ben Elazar mishom raya yomes achama hoya v'zimois achama v'kimin she'avu lo yomes atzina miyad meis. Immediately right, it died. So you have one man the says it could live, one the man the says what it cannot live.